Here's the problem with calling this a ceasefire. If peace is really back, why does the region still look like it's bracing for the next shock? For a brief moment, diplomacy seemed to work. With Pakistan brokering talks, Washington and Tehran agreed to suspend hostilities. The world exhaled. Oil prices stabilized, and negotiators rushed to Islamabad for what the White House called historic peace talks. But behind the scenes, the ceasefire was never solid. Iranian leaders fumed at the terms, while the voices in Washington warned the ceasefire was a tactical pause, not a peace. The week that followed proved them right. In mid April, President Donald Trump ordered the US Navy to enforce a naval blockade of Iranian ports. He justified the blockade by claiming Iran was using the ceasefire to bolster its forces and export oil to fund its military. On his social media platform, he boasted that Iran was collapsing financially and said the regime was losing $500 million a day because of US pressure. The US Navy began redirecting ships bound for Iran and even fired on and seized an Iranian flagged tanker near the strait. Tehran was furious. Iran's vice president warned that the security of the Strait of Hormuz is not free and closed the waterway to almost all foreign shipping, capturing foreign flag ships in retaliation. Iranian officials called the blockade piracy and demanded that Washington lift it before talks could resume. Meanwhile, Iran's armed forces mined the strait and threatened to target energy infrastructure across the Gulf. By late April, the ceasefire was more fiction than fact. Reuters reported that Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi left Pakistan without an agreement and that President Trump cancelled his envoy's visit to Islamabad, leaving negotiations in limbo. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian declared that Tehran would not enter imposed negotiations under blockade. He insisted the US first remove operational obstacles, including the blockade. Trump responded by saying Iran's offer was inadequate and boasting on Truth Social that the US held all the cards. As words grew harsher, events on the ground did too. Netanyahu quickly launched new strikes against Hezbollah positions in Lebanon, brushing aside the 3-week ceasefire. Tehran hit back by tightening control over the Strait of Hormuz and restricting the narrow passage that normally carries a large share of the world's oil and liquefied gas. That chokehold left tankers stuck and sent crude prices higher, adding more fuel to global inflation. At the same time, Trump's blockade continued. The Council on Foreign Relations noted that traffic in the Strait of Hormuz remained at a screeching halt and that the United States had turned away more than 30 vessels. Iran seized 2 ships and maintained about 40% of its drone arsenal and 60% of its missile launcher capabilities. So, what is President Trump's strategy? In a conversation with Council of Foreign Relations experts, Stephen Cook observed that both Washington and Tehran think they are winning. Trump does not want to lift the blockade until Iran meets US conditions and Iranians refuse to capitulate. The result is a statement that Trump is trying to break by squeezing Iran's economy. He extended the ceasefire indefinitely but made clear he was prepared to return to hostilities if Tehran did not bend. In his own words, Trump argued that internal divisions within Iran's leadership made negotiations impossible. He portrayed Iran as chaotic, saying nobody knows who is in charge. US officials echoed this line, claiming there was tremendous infighting in Tehran, but Iranian leaders countered that they were united. Iran's first vice president insisted that political diversity is their democracy and that we are a single hand under one flag, while President Pezeshkian rejected labels like moderates and hardliners and declared that Iran is one soul, one nation. Trump's next move appears to be doubling down on economic warfare. In his view, the surest way to make Tehran back down is to cut off its oil earnings. So he's leaning into a blockade designed to choke off Iran's exports. But analysts point out that implementing and sustaining such a blockade is messy with plenty of unintended consequences. Iran normally exports oil, gas, petrochemicals, plastics, and agricultural products by sea. The closure of the strait created a near shutdown of the vital choke point. Yet Iran has continued to export its own energy products through the waterway. Iran's resilience is partly due to large reserves of crude oil stored on tankers. About 160 million to 170 million barrels afloat around the world. Kenneth Katzman from the US Congressional Research Service told Al Jazeera that these floating reserves could keep Iran's revenue flowing until August. That timeline is longer than many in Washington anticipated. Katzman warned that Trump might have to consider kinetic escalation, military strikes, if he wants to bring the conflict to a conclusion or accept less than his ideal deal. Former Ambassador Adam Areli added that Iran's leadership and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps have revolutionary fervor and can tolerate pain longer than US planners expect. In addition to oil, Iran has begun charging tolls on ships that use the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian officials said they had received the first revenues from tolls imposed since March. Some vessels are reportedly paying as much as $2 million each, with at least 2 paying in yuan. This scheme provides Iran another revenue stream and underscores how the strait has become a bargaining chip. Trump faces domestic domestic constraints too. Under US law, he can conduct a foreign offensive without congressional approval for 60 days, a deadline that arrives on May 1st. Analysts told Al Jazeera that dire conditions on the US ships enforcing the blockade and pressure from allies could test his resolve. China has already said it considers the blockade of trade with Iran unacceptable and may react if its cargo continues to be seized. If Trump pushes too far, he risks alienating partners and triggering a broader conflict. This isn't just a geopolitical chess match, it touches everyone who buys fuel, heats their home, or depends on a global economy. The Strait of Hormuz is a vital artery, blocking it disrupts supply and drives prices higher. When Iran shut the Strait of Hormuz and Washington clamped down with a blockade, oil prices shot past $100 a barrel. That jump soon filtered through to drivers at the pump, raised freight costs, and fed inflation across the globe. News reports noted that the standoff pushed energy markets to levels not seen in years and cast a shadow over the world economy. With the strait virtually closed, shipping lines had to detour around the Cape of Good Hope, adding weeks to voyages and jacking up insurance bills. For Iran, the crisis cuts to the bone. Roughly 4/5 of its exports normally sail through Hormuz, and high prices before the blockade had been a rare windfall. Around $4.97 billion in a single month, about 40% more than before fighting broke out. That money funds domestic services, the military, and allied militias across the region. Trump's blockade seeks to starve Iran's war machine, but as we've seen, Iran has contingency plans. It can store oil on tankers, sell to China and other partners, and even turn the strait itself into a toll road. Beyond economics, there's a risk of miscalculation. Military assets from multiple countries operate in a confined space. In April alone, the US intercepted at least 3 Iranian flagged tankers in Asian waters, while Iran captured foreign commercial vessels around the strait. Mines, drone swarms, and fast boats dart in and out of shipping lanes. A single clash could ignite a wider war, drawing in Gulf states, Israel, and potentially China or Russia. Former Ambassador Adam Areli warned that Iran may outlast US patience. He predicted that Iran can tolerate severe restriction conditions longer than most policymakers imagine. Reactions to the deteriorating ceasefire have been divided. In Washington, hawks argue that Trump's hard line is necessary. They believe Iran has long evaded sanctions and used revenue to fund proxies. Supporters cheer the blockade as a way to cut off those resources. Some analysts even claim the blockade is working as Iran's military capabilities are degraded and its leaders appear unsettled. On the other hand, critics warn that the policy is collective punishment. They note that even before the war, Iranians faced economic hardship. Cutting off trade could push ordinary people deeper into poverty without forcing the government to compromise. In Iran, the narrative is one of resistance. Officials insist the nation is united. They dismiss the idea of internal chaos. Iran's vice president insisted that unity transcends political labels, while Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi ridiculed allegations of divisions. State media shows crowds with anti-American slogans, and social media accounts highlight stories of Iranian sailors maneuvering past US warships. The government also reminds citizens that closing the strait hurts the world as much as it hurts Iran. In posts on X, leaders argue that one cannot restrict Iran's oil exports while expecting free security for others. Globally, responses vary. Energy importing countries worry about supply shocks. Europe, already facing high energy prices, fears further disruption. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan even claimed the war is starting to weaken Europe. China has protested the blockade because its cargo has been caught in the dragnet. Gulf states are anxious. While they oppose Iran, they also need stable shipping to sell their own oil. The United Nations has called for restraint, but with the Security Council divided, there is no consensus on how to enforce a peace. Experts see several possible scenarios. One, the first is escalation. If Trump decides that economic pressure isn't enough, he could resume airstrikes. Kenneth Katzman warned that Trump might need kinetic escalation to force Iran to accept US terms. That could mean targeted strikes on Iranian naval bases, missile sites, or oil infrastructure. Such attacks would provoke retaliation. Iran has already demonstrated its ability to hit energy infrastructure and US military bases. A cycle of strikes could drag the region into a wider war. 2. The second scenario is a negotiated settlement. For that to happen, both sides must make concessions. Iran insists the blockade must be lifted first. The US demands that Iran curtail its missile program and support for proxies. Mediator Pakistan remains engaged, but the cancellation of the envoy's trip shows how fragile the talks are. Some analysts believe China, which buys Iranian oil, could use its leverage to nudge Tehran toward compromise. Others think European countries could offer incentives. The challenge is trust. Each side fears that easing pressure will be seen as weakness. In political science, this is known as security dilemma. 3. The third scenario is protracted stalemate. As Stephen Cook pointed out, each side thinks they are winning. Tehran is likely to keep using the Strait of Hormuz as leverage, charging tolls on passing ships, while Washington sticks to its blockade and interceptions. Unless mounting global pressure brings them back to talks, this could drag on, and the longer it lasts, the more it raises shipping costs and scares investors around the world. 4. Finally, there is the factor X, which is domestic politics. Trump faces congressional limits and an election cycle. Iran's leaders must satisfy hardliners while avoiding internal unrest. If either side faces a crisis at home, economic or political, it could change the calculus. And as we speak, tankers sit idle in warm waters, drones patrol the skies, and diplomats trade barbs instead of papers. The ceasefire that was supposed to bring calm has morphed into a test of endurance. Trump thinks he can starve Iran into submission without firing another shot, while Tehran is convinced it can wait out the pressure and force the world to accept its terms. Between those two bets hangs the fate of global energy markets and regional stability. Will an economic squeeze turn into open conflict? Can the Strait of Hormuz stay closed without triggering a worldwide recession? Or will some last minute compromise pull everyone back from the brink? Whatever happens next will echo far beyond Tehran and Washington, and that narrow bottleneck of water will keep reminding us how geography can still hold the world hostage.